think it's a really interesting sort of observation of like the internal and the external, right? So it's like we're so hard coded to function in society and sort of keep up appearances and hold it together, but in that process we sort of stop listening to sort of natural intuition or all of the ways that we can be mindful of like who we are.
Today we are joined by the Kumar sisters of Supernova Design, and they released a brand new short titled Creatures of Chaos, which is now making its waves around film festivals. And even though it's a quick piece to watch, Creatures of Chaos dives into so many layers regarding our own mental health. After watching it, it hit me hard. And even though this interview is under 20 minutes, man, I could have talked to them for hours on the message, these subjects. And around the message and heavy subjects, they just presented it in this cool way. It's actually kind of cute with these creatures or entities kind of latching onto people. And yeah, I could talk forever about this piece, but why don't you hear from the ladies who made it right now? Just want to say I loved your short film so much, and what I think is so cool about it was it's 6 minutes long, and afterwards I just felt like going into this interview, I can do a 3, 4, 5 hour interview about what I just saw, just from how many layers of things you put into this short period of time, and just kind of reading up on it, I thought it was cool that you kind of found these characters from the ceramics. Am I correct? And I kind of want to know how you connected those to this story and how the inception of this big idea happened.
Yeah, that's a great first question. And first of all, like really glad that you enjoyed the short. And part of the reason why we made it is for this to happen, for people to like want to have conversations about it, which is the whole intention of the short. So Shai and I are sisters. We grew up in India, and where we grew up, mental health struggles were often met with like stigma and shame and silence. And so this cultural silence for a big part kind of like shaped our worldview from a young age. And mental health challenges have always existed. And after the pandemic, now I live in Los Angeles, Shai lives in Copenhagen. Mental health challenges sort of became more visible and urgent for us, like personally and also globally. Um, I'm an animation filmmaker, and visual art has always sort of been a refuge for me. So during this period, I turned to pottery and turned to clay. And I also started teaching and mentoring emerging artists to sort of ground myself and reconnect with community a little bit. So I started making these blobby clay creatures, which were sort of physical manifestations of my own emotional distress. And I call them creatures of chaos. Clay sort of gives you permission to play, and it's sort of soft and malleable. So it was sort of like the perfect medium to explore these ideas. And then following that, we started doing some pop-ups at like markets around Los Angeles. And people started asking questions about these characters, and they're like, who are they? Why did you make them? And then it ended up leading to conversations about their own emotional struggles. And so seeing how strongly people sort of resonated with these creatures inspired Chai and I to develop a story. We're like, oh, I think we need to kind of investigate this a little bit. Maybe this is like a good time to start talking about it. So about 2 years ago, we started, working on writing this film and making it together with the hopes of exploring the stigma around mental health, importance of vulnerability, and just generally the healing power of community.
Oh, that's so beautiful too. And I feel like, yeah, it's interesting. I could see like kind of like bringing these creatures out to the public, and I notice a lot of times like people they kind of like bury their own mental health problems too. They don't put it on the outside, but when one person kind of steps out and makes them feel like it's a safe place, I can totally imagine like all these people just connecting to even the meanings of the different creatures and everything. And one thing right off the bat when I was watching the animation too, I thought of these creatures as almost like, because each person had a different one, but it was almost like their aura or life force or maybe even like a natural intuition. Am I kind of right on that? Like it's like almost everybody's internal narrative like manifesting into these creatures.
I think like our idea was to sort of leave them a little bit open to interpretation, but it's like we all have our own demons that we're fighting. And
Hmm.
these creatures were sort of they were sort of our way of just visualizing that. We didn't want to be very prescriptive about this is this particular feeling or this is what we want you to feel when you look at this one. But I think, yeah, that's pretty much what we were going for, that they're just there. And then anyone who's watching it, they can project their own inner struggle or their own inner feelings that they're going through onto these creatures. At least that's what we were going for.
Oh, that's cool. It kind of how I watched it, and it connected with me personally too. It almost reminded me of maybe in moments I'd have a natural intuition about something, but there's been so many times in my life in the past where I used to work like these jobs in toxic environments, and then there was it almost felt like there was another like voice in the back of my head telling me like you shouldn't be there or whatever, and you just kind of like jam it down and like because of the way you're programmed with society, like, oh, I got to do this to pay my bills or whatever, or like just these bad environments kind of become like your natural norm. And I don't know, that's just kind of what I got out of like this animation and those people or those creatures attached to the people. It's almost like something telling them something's wrong, but they kind of keep pushing them away and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the idea is also just these feelings, they sort of grow and they evolve and they change. They're so nebulous that we are not sort of trying to show that you got to destroy them. We're just trying to sort of make people feel seen and heard and hold space for them. And also just know that you can find a way to like mitigate the situation. You can mold your situation, you can improve it. You don't necessarily need to change it or try to overcome it. And community and connection and feeling, like you're not just the only one is like a good way of doing that. That's at least what we're hoping people take away from the film.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and Sean, to what you said earlier, I think it's a really interesting sort of observation of like the internal and the external, right? So it's like we're so hard coded to function in society and sort of keep up appearances and hold it together, but in that process, we sort of stop listening to sort of natural intuition or all of the ways that we can be mindful of like who we are. We sort of forget that we have all the mechanisms to kind of like warn us when things are not right, and and I think being unable to connect with people as human beings makes you more and more distanced from that inner voice and from that mechanism that sort of warns you. And the moment you sort of open up connection, the moment you have like a sort of like um space in which you can be vulnerable with somebody else, you realize that you're kind of human and that you've been ignoring like all of these things all of this time. And when you see it in someone else, you also see it in yourself. So you're able to acknowledge it a whole lot better. So I think that's like that's a really interesting observation as well. And I
Hmm.
love that we can have these conversations and everyone takes away like so many different sort of like layered meanings from this piece, which again like was by design. So we're also like learning how people are sort of engaging with this with every conversation, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, that is wonderful and really cool too. Yeah, I can imagine different people watching it and getting like a different perspective or relating to something. And I can imagine like every interview you're doing is different in a way of somebody taking it in a different way. And yeah, it's just so cool. And like yeah, you mentioned kind of just having those safe spaces is very important to for a human. I feel like a lot of these characters I related to more in my past, and I feel like I've kind of over the years have like a revelation of healing, but it took practice and almost like awareness too. So I don't know, it's just a piece that just kind of hit me really hard, like personally too. And one thing I liked as well is that there isn't any dialogue. It's like all the pictures kind of do the talking too. And do you have any philosophy on going into that or like the decision making on that?
Yeah, I think we actually started out by thinking that there could be dialogue. We weren't very, we were sort of just exploring like what are the possibilities. we actually thought of it as a poem in a sort
Mhm.
of like Nightmare Before Christmas style narrative. And then I think the more thought we put into it, we felt like so that it could transcend like ages and cultures and like that it's more accessible to everyone. We felt like the visuals themselves can tell the story. And then we just decided to scrap the dialogue. And after showing it to friends and family in different contexts, like Asa lives in the US, I'm in Denmark, our family is back in India. We've been showing it to a lot of people, and the fact that there is no dialogue also makes for more interesting conversations and takeaways from the film. So that was actually like a good pivot that we made, and a
Yeah.
good learning for us as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you know, like we definitely to be able to craft a narrative, we had to start with some words, but we got to a point where we felt like we if we dialed up the visual design and the visual storytelling a little bit, we could eliminate dialogue altogether, like Shai said. And then it also opened up this whole space to allow for like sound design to take up that room and do a lot of world building from that aspect. So we worked with composer sound designer Wesley Silver, who runs a studio called Sanctus, and their studio actually created these sound textures and emotes and sort of language, which is you know like it's not any like specific language, but to breathe life into these characters and kind of allow for them to still feel real and grounded and tethered into a world, but um you can feel emotion, you can hear reactions, but you don't necessarily need dialogue. So it still feels like it's a complete world, but it's a lot more accessible without language.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Yeah, because like you were like saying, it can pretty much go to or like anybody who's just living the human experience. It doesn't matter what language they speak. They can probably watch this and relate to it some way. And even I like how you kind of made your own little language. It kind of reminded me of another popular video game that exploded around the whole world was The Sims, where they took
Yeah.
little
The
snippets of of
Yeah,
different
it's so
languages.
glad you got that. Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that was actually one of our references. So our sound designer was like, "So do you want it to be a little bit like Simlish?" And I was like, "Yeah, it could be cool if it was something like that where you get the tonality of what they're saying, but not necessarily like you don't need to have like language." I think the sound studio did like a really incredible job of sort of like tethering it to that sort of world where there's like emotion, but there's not like specific need of language. But yeah, that was definitely one of our references. So I'm so glad you picked up on that.
Yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, even it's cool to talk to you guys too because I did watch it like a little bit before we fired up the Zoom call. And I find the more I'm thinking about it too, the more I appreciate it too. And again, like I said at the beginning, it's so cool that it's like only 6 minutes. It's like kind of like a quick hit, but then it lingers with you after, and even like being able to have a discussion like this too. And even with all the different human characters, is there any like specific ones that you guys kind of like related to like the most, or maybe like came from a real experience?
So in some ways they're all kind of real experiences. I think I've been all of those characters. But something that came up during a previous conversation was the grandfather character. We had sort of designed him based on our grandfather, but we realized when we showed it to our mom that she's like, "Oh, you have like dad in there." And I was like, oh, that wasn't really supposed to be dad." And then we're like, "Oh, actually, dad's in his 70s. So that's actually him because he does look like her grandfather." So yeah, I mean, that became like a whole thing with our family. But I mean, I think in terms of relating to characters, I've definitely been all of them. I have
Yeah.
definitely felt like panic with the news and doom scrolling and you know, struggling with like burnout with work and like feeling lonely as someone that's moved away and doesn't live in their home country anymore.
Mhm. Same
Mhm.
for
So
me. Yeah,
yeah.
been there, been all of them.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I definitely feel the same. And I guess as like a final question, we get a lot of different creatives checking out these segments too. And Just, I guess, like in general, if somebody's watching this and they had like a big idea they kind of like wanted to bring to life, or like maybe a message in an animation, would you have any like general advice of how they can take the first step to make that happen?
Mm. We did this maybe not with this particular project, but we've done this in the past with one of our previous short films. Animation is something that's sort of like time consuming and labor intensive. It is a labor of love, but it does take time. But if someone did want to sort of tell a story in this medium, a comic book or like a web comic is like a good first start to sort of like test that idea out and see if it has legs. And I think it's a lot quicker to make something like that and share it with people and get sort of immediate like response on it. We used to do a lot of like comic book festivals and stuff. So that used to be our sort of old process, that we would make like a mini version of something and test it out with people and see if they were excited about it and be like, okay, I guess like this is cool and people really want to talk more about this. So we'll make it into a film.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's very sound advice. And I know it's playing in a festival this weekend. Unfortunately, this episode's coming out like a little later just by my own scheduling. But is there any future plans of maybe releasing this like as a VOD or online somewhere in the near future where the world can see it?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have plans at the moment. We're trying to do a lot of local festivals, festivals where like both me and Shai can attend, maybe some in Europe, maybe some here. And definitely looking to do a lot more like community screenings where we can have these conversations with people like on the ground. Eventually, we would love to, put it like online for it to be more accessible. What exactly that format looks like, we don't really know. We're kind of like strategy wise, we're building the plane as we're flying it, but we definitely want to get it in front of as many people as possible. But yeah, that's kind of what's next for us.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's super exciting. And as we see it pop up different places, I'm definitely gonna follow you guys on your socials. We'll be sure to share it with some clips of these interviews and everything. But yeah, very nice to meet you guys. Beautiful work, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what's next for you. And hopefully, you guys keep doing projects like this.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for having
Right.
it.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having us.
Big thanks once again to the Kumar sisters. It was lovely picking your brain on this piece. And if you yourself want to follow this project, I think the easiest way is probably following their Instagram page, which is Supernova Design Inc. Supernova Design INC. And I know since we've recorded this interview, they gave updates of new screenings and other things where you can keep in the loop of Creatures of Chaos and hopefully see it in a town near you. And with that being said, we can't run away without thanking all you legends on the Patreon page. And first up, the biggest thanks to the Queen, Ola Mazuka of Sonic Fold. Sonic Fold is another thing you should follow on Instagram. Get some of the most soulful interviews. Also, Ola is a community builder, a DJ, and much more. So follow Sonic Fold, soak in some vibes. Another huge thanks to the lovely Amanda McKnight of the Vamp X13 channel. If you're into comic books, movies, video games, and all things nerdy, look up Vamp X13 on YouTube or Vamp X13 on Twitch. Another huge thanks to the wonderful Jenny Potter, the legend Devin McBride, the #1 gent Alan Kent, and last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. If you want to shout out at the end of these episodes and also get these episodes early, raw, uncut, right when I'm done the Zoom call, I just post them. You can go to patreon.com/the creative imbalance. And beyond having my forever thanks, you can just go to bed at night and sleep soundly, knowing you're a badass motherfucker who supports raw, uncut, independent media. And nobody can take that away from you. You hear me? And with that being said, we got so many episodes coming your way. Oh my god, I got so much editing to do. But some amazing stuff with legends of music, movies, television. So stay tuned for all of that, and we'll catch you next time. Mwah.